Bueno, buen día a todos. Buenas tardes, mejor dicho.
Good afternoon. I hope that this first presentation after lunch doesn't make you bow. My name is José Clastornik, and I'm the executive director of AGESIC, and I'm going to try and show you how we do things in AGESIC. And that's my presentation. But before that, I'd like to make a brief introduction. I would like to ask one first question. And Uruguay is a small country. How many things is Uruguay a leader in the region and in the world? When you say Uruguay, and my question is mainly addressed at Uruguayans, what do you think when you think of Uruguay? Do you think about the volume of indicators that we lead? For instance, democracy, and we have indicators of transparency, and many other indicators that truly help in that area. I'm tempted. The clock seems to have stopped at 30 minutes, and I'm tempted not to tell you, but I think that this is my quota of honesty linked to democracy, and tell you that the clock is still ticking 30 minutes. Now, the other thing has to do with indicators that date back to history regarding the distribution of certain rights, rights to health and education and free education. But except for you in a digital event, most certainly when you talk to someone else, and the answer may not be that Uruguay is a leader in digital area, in the digital area. Let me show you this. 1 second. We are the first in digital government indicators. This is the third or fourth indicator in the region for some years. We are the first Latin American country. We form part of a group of countries that are highly developed in digital government. So we've gone to another category. That's an indicator of the United Nations. We rank first in the digital development of ITU, of digital rights. We are ITU and OAS ranking first in cybersecurity, the same thing in open government. And because of all these indicators, Uruguay was invited to participate in a very specific group of countries, of leaders in issues related to digital government: Estonia, New Zealand, England, Israel. And we were invited to participate. There were 5 and then 7 with us, and there are 9 now, to try and share experiences. Now we hold the chair, and I'm going to tell you about this in a minute. My presentation has to do with how we build that leadership. It's not for free. The fact of keeping up the image of Uruguay, it's like keeping the image of a passing star. The fact that all countries are talking about us, about digital government, that they recognize how we rank, where we rank, means that we have to build an ongoing action. And that's the work I want to tell you about. And I would like to make a difference with marketing. There are countries that make marketing actions that would put a country up, but it certainly falls very quickly. You need some marketing to be recalled, but that's something different. The only reality is that you can only keep a position and seen in the place where it is, and tell me that the place where we are being seen is very strong. You can only do that if you have a reality as a basis. And what I want to tell you how, from AGESIC, we built that reality. Anything we want to see, depaperizing of the state, is the clinical history. Anything that you'd like to take as an example, you will see that there are many things that are pre-requirements. Sometimes you need a certain law, sometimes you need a certain interoperability platform, you need other things. That's all right. And you have to do those things, but you can't wait until they are built to start working. The first thing you have to do is to make things happen and to start with fewer products possible, or minimum products possible, to make it a reality. And then someone comes up and says, in marketing, use an electronic digital documents, and you put it in a general directorate of a ministry, and you are no longer using paper. Well, reality is that you don't. Document management requires, the first thing that happens is that you have digitalized that general director, but there are many units that are not included, or the electronic file, that's what it's called. It's printed, and it's taken printed somewhere else where it's scanned and repaged, or there are many other multiple document forms that we haven't worked on. That's what I call working on the long tail. We have to try and see whether we can include 100% of all this, of all digitalization in the various areas, to start saying that on the basis of a reality, not on the basis of marketing, that what we are doing and what we are really having to do is to truly digitalize. Is that all? Well, no. We've been working some things that we haven't taken into account. We have to start with the electronic signature, or identifying, or in the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service had something like that. And then we have to have a unique authentication in all the state. And from then onwards, we have to start with a new cycle, optimizing and improving what can be improved. And it's never ending. Why is this so? Well, because technology doesn't allow us to end. We're always going to have new technologies, new ideas, new demands. And I would like to talk about these four things. And I would like to address this and in the rest of my talk. We said we have to make things happen. The graph that you see on the screen is the graph about proceedings in the past 4 years, including 2019. It's an estimate until the end of the year on the basis of 3/4 of the year that have already elapsed. And as you can see, the curve is becoming horizontal. It's getting to the base of 1,630 proceedings, which we have defined as a standard in our survey with the IADB. These are proceedings at the central administration. Now, if we look at communications and electronic communications and notices, that's the level of growth, enormous growth that we've had. Yesterday, we were talking with the Internal Revenue Service and the Social Security Administration that they were going to stop the use of other mechanisms in their places to do it in this way. And the same thing happens with unique users. single users had generated their own users that we are using, or we've been using since the beginning of proceedings and services, and that's what we had been using at the very beginning. Now, this single users have been growing exponentially, and with Internal Revenue Service and the Social Security Administration, we are entering into an agreement so that we only have UI users. We have a single window right now that allows you to go in any way, and we have managed the equivalence, but that's our target. I haven't brought the nicest graph because it's in a video, and it's the interoperability graph of the platform. It's very charming, in fact, and we've taken the graph of the presentation of the Estonia model, where you can see all the interactions there are. You can see the interaction nodes and the volumes, and you can play around and see all the connections that are in all the web services of the state. Very well, we started with a project, and now we have to work in the long tail. The idea is to try and understand what we have to do in that 100%. The example I've given you is exactly this one. What you can see, outside, you say, well, we've set up the digital file in all the administration. That's not the case. When it's a question of marketing, to move forward in digitalization means a whole issue of document digitalization. Even when we are getting close to 100%, we are thinking about whether we shouldn't be doing the whole thing to see a different logics of that is different of document transfer, to have the basis for a true transformation. And when you try, when you look at that 100%, there are several things that are identified, and there is something about 100% that sees that means we have to set out challenges that are almost unachievable. To have challenges and to have goals that push us forward to do things. But 100%, when you take it up, it means that we have to work not at a ministry, but at all ministries and everywhere, not in just one type of document, but in all documents, and not only proceedings and services focused on citizens, but on the back office and the administrative work, or the back office that is most important from the standpoint of the specific issues of the institution or the agency or the interconnector that we're working on. Now the question comes up, and it says, what's the real limit of 100%? That is, for instance, in proceedings. There are proceedings that you do it once every 2 years. And what's the logic of digitalizing or specifying chatbots for that particular circumstance? The logic of 100% is a permanent challenge. It's the one we're looking for, but you always have to take into account the rationality of the budget that you have. And the other value is equity. That's the value that we take up whenever we explain what we are doing in Uruguay. Our motto to present it is transformation with connectivity. And the truth is that when we define it, honestly speaking, sometimes you don't see the value of all the things you're doing. But you start discovering along the way, not everything that you do is things that you're aware of. Sometimes they come up by chance. I've had to give talks in highly developed countries when you're saying, when you're talking, when you're giving a talk, and you say, how is it that I'm here giving a talk about this in such a highly developed country, and they ask you how fascinated they are by that 100% of equity. I'm talking, about a population in northern countries that don't have access in connectivity or digital connectivity or anything else. Let's talk about improving what is improvable. What do you think is the graph that follows this, the one of proceedings, when you digitalize proceedings? Well, I said it should be a horizontal graph. If you have completed 100% of all proceedings, it should be horizontal. And I think this is a fight between two opposing forces. One is the red tape, the bureaucratic one, and the other one is the capacity of simplification that we could have. So in some way, our logic is probably something that goes up and down, depending on how we can look at things for the future. But it's clear that to work on the digital transformation, we've changed the working paradigms. Our paradigms that were at the beginning, that the startup and saying, I'm going to do this project, I'm going to make things happen. Sometimes logic is more linked to projects and deliverables of projects. Now, the logic that is linked to the digital transformation, to the improvement, the ongoing improvement, is rather linked to transformation. And what you can see in each case is different things. You look at project results in the first case, you measure an impact in the other case. Now, believe me, the question of impact changes organizations. We're starting to need another feature. We start needing economists and sociologists and specialists that allow us to approach that type of impact analysis. And this is what we are being asked. This question of leadership, what happens is that all projects that we are launching are considered benchmarks for something else. They are asking for this, and they want to see the methodologies that we are applying to be able to use them once again. Now, obviously, the way of approach changes, the methodology changes, how we deal with projects methodologically. But what we do have to take into account, what we do have to know, is that all those improvements are subject to all technological changes that are coming. And if you think of the curves of digital technology, when it goes up very steeply, the first logic that we have to have in mind is that, and very strongly, is the capacity to anticipate those technologies, to be able to apply them. And that involves leadership to the outside, but it also means the reality inwards. And we've got a division, a specific division on emerging technologies that is permanently checking that. One of the strongest discussions that I'm having at D9 in that group is that, conceptually speaking, how should we work to advance technologically? The logic can't be, I'm going to make a technological test, although there is a need for them, to understand how certain technologies are implemented. The real logic is to know how to apply its value, where it applies, when. In a working group of the D9, we take this theory of legislation. The group was formed with New Zealand and Israel, and they made a test of testing social security laws. You would put in your data, and they would tell you the numbers of work and data related to your family and the working environment, and it would tell you how much money you would get when you retire in each country. 60 in Uruguay, 65 in Israel and New Zealand. I think that's not enough. I mean, conceptually speaking, we have to look at the scenarios where we can test or try out that technology? How can we visualize the value of legal frameworks? Can you imagine a legal framework that has a loop inside to be able to check? But mainly other things such as simulations. How can you automatically generate with a little effort that simulation environment? Now, the second thing about advancing or moving or be in the forefront of technology is that this isn't done alone. It doesn't. You can't do it on your own in the country. It doesn't work on itself outside, and that's why it's important to be a part of all these groups, to be associated, to be an associate to all those members and share experiences. In Canada, they are investing $2 billion from the government and $2 million from the private sector on AI. The same thing happens with France. I can go on with example. The closer we can be to them, the more we can share, the easier it's going to be to scan the things that we do. That's why the D9 is important. That's why it's important to participate in working group, and that's why it's important here to have a stronger ecosystem. Well, what I mean by the ecosystem, I mean the industry in general, software industry, I mean the academia, I mean all the sectors. Right now, we have a loan on cybersecurity. We've just entered into the agreement, focusing on two things. The maturity level on security response, capable of modeling different situations whenever there is an attack, and a whole vertical line specifically to generate capacities, to build capacities in the industry and in the government institutions. Now, this is most important. We can't have an important development level if we don't have a level of backup in cybersecurity, and it's important to build capacity that tells the industry apart. Fabiana is always telling me that I must talk about the fact that Uruguay is the only country of the NIS and American INS and enforcing compliance. Now, there is an opportunity for investment, 25% annually in topics of security, and this is just an announcement. There is a lot to be done in that area. Now, the cycle of 4 steps that I mentioned, when you have the last 2 that are feeding back, doesn't happen in just one area, but in all areas. Our art falls within our capacities, and our budget is to work with all of you so that those developments continue. Cycles are completed. We can go from the digitalization logic to the digital transformation logic, which is the one of the last 2 parts of the cycle, and to be able to do it in general terms, always within a context that is strategic. We have a digital government plan with 6 dimensions. I'm not going to go into that today, but each one of those cycles, 4 steps each, apply in each one of the areas, in each one of the 19 boxes that you have there, and the project centers inside those boxes. Now, all the topic of digital government forms part of a broader theme, which is the one that we try to explain when we're abroad, and that is the theme of Digital Uruguay. It's of a country that leads digital issues, connectivity, digital government, regulatory frameworks, and that suddenly today it's a bit of a secret for our players here. This is the presentation we make sometimes, about digital Uruguay. There is a country that is a digital country. That country is Uruguay, where all people have the same possibilities to have access to the internet. Men, women, young, old, in the field, in the city. All homes have broadband and cell phones to study, to watch films, or to become an influencer. It's not something weird or strange. Students and the retired have their own tablets and computers, and some of them can even program or make robots since a very early age. All information and digital service are in gub.ui. Through a user and a profile, you can have access to documents and follow up your proceedings and services. The proceedings have become simplified and have been sped up. If you have a chip that you can identify yourself, you don't only not go on a queue, but you have a key right to have access to all the rights of the digital world. Even you have a digital passport to be able to travel more safely. And all persons have a digital medical record, so that it's safe everywhere you are, and all that is guaranteeing your rights in the digital world. And something else, Uruguay is a benchmark in the application of new technologies, exporting software and productive traceability. And though it's a small country, it is the leader in digital government, open government, transparency, and democracy. And it is a member of D9, the group of most developed countries at digital level. Uruguay has digital services that are innovative, that make life easier. It's one of the most advanced societies and equalitarians in the world in digital development. AGESIC, Presidency of the Republic of Uruguay. And I conclude with the minutes I have left, with a parochial parish announcement. In November, on the 4th and 7th November, we have a ministerial summit with all our partners from D9. We're going to be 10 with the main countries in digital government. We are going to hold internal meetings, but we are also going to have public AGESIC meeting. We're going to have meetings apart from the ministerial summit. We're going to have specific exchanges, one particularly to continue making Uruguay's capacities to be in the digital world. Thank you all.
Gracias.